Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions and Blended Scotch Reviews, coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Monday, August 11th, 2025, where it is currently 98 degrees. This channel is studying the basic blended scotches, mostly the popular ones that everyone's heard about, but a few more obscure blends as well. I do a review of each whiskey, and then I pair two whiskeys together for a head-to-head blind match, so I can see that maybe I can choose which one I like the most. Then, if I can find and afford one of the main contributing single malts that go into these blends, I examine them as well and pair them up to see which single malt I prefer. Today's blended scotch that I'm reviewing is Grant's Triple Wood. Just the facts. This is a blended scotch weighing in at 40% ABV or 80 proof. The label says it's triple wood, meaning it is blended and then aged in 3 different types of wood for a smooth, rich, mellow taste. The barrels they use include virgin oak, American oak, and ex-Bourbon casks. This is distilled by William Grant & Sons, still a family-owned business since 1887. This bottle cost me $17.49, 750 milliliters, at Goody Goody here in Fort Worth. And many say that this is the world's 4th best-selling Scotch whiskey. Tasting notes. I find it to be bold and spicy, mildly sweet. Mainly the spice and wood notes are dominating for me. Perhaps a bit earthy and mossy, because there's a little bit of peat smoke in there. This is right up my alley. My score for this whiskey was at 83, but the letter grade drinkability an A-. Analysis and recommendation. With just a slight trace of peat, this is a bold, spicy blend that works great neat or in a cocktail. For a bourbon drinker coming into Scotch, I think this is a good pick, as the spiciness that it picks up from the ex-Bourbon casks may be a familiar touch. And this has long been a favorite of mine. Let's get into the details. History. William Grant had been working for a distillery in Scotland as a bookkeeper, but saved his money until he could buy his own distillery in 1887. He and his 7 sons, wife, and 2 daughters built the Glenfiddich distillery in the village of Dufftown, there in the Speyside region, named for the Valley of Deer, Glenfiddich. Hence the stag on the bottles of Glenfiddich. There you go. During Prohibition, the Grants continued distilling and putting away whiskey, counting on Prohibition to be a short-term problem. They have their own coppersmiths and coopers on site. In the 1950s, Hans Schläger, a German refugee from Nazi Germany, designed the triangular bottles that we see with their line, both the Glenfiddich and the Grant's blended. And this whiskey proved very successful in 1963 because Glenfiddich became the first distillery to market their own single malt outside of Scotland. Very risky business move, but again, it was just very successful. Today, the distillery is still family owned after 5 generations. So for history, 5 points out of 5. Bottle, label, and marketing. The website seems to be heavily influenced by DEI, unfortunately, and only one of the 4 big box stores in Fort Worth has the 750 milliliter bottle. Another one does have a 1.75, but I don't buy those. YouTube does have an ad from 10 years ago, again heavily DEI, showing the changing face of Scotland. The bottle is nice. I like the unique triangular style. The label is nice, and I like the color scheme. The brownish red with the gold really kind of brings out the color of the whiskey, I believe. The label has the words "Stand Fast" in 2 locations. There, and then up here somewhere. And that's the old name for this. The name for the blend went from Stand Fast to Family Reserve to Triple Wood. There are, there's a date up here, 1887. You know, whiskey companies love to brag about how old their stuff is, how old their company is, and all that. In this case, I think it's a very appropriate date, very accurate. And again, on YouTube, there were several more ads. Actually, I found quite a few ads for grants on YouTube, but none recent. There's a couple that are younger than 10 years, but most of them are in the 14-year range. One going back all the way to the 1960s, but the volume and sound on that was broken and unreadable. There was one ad from Australia, but basically I saw no relevant ads for today. The one, again, from 10 years ago was heavily DEI. So the bottle and label I like are good, but the lack of advertising downgrades this, so 4 points out of 5. Appearance of this whiskey in the bottle, you know, it's kind of a golden color, rich golden color, but when you look at it in the glass, it's a little bit lighter than you would think from looking at the bottle. Again, I think bottles sometimes reflect the color of the label some, so this looks a little bit lighter there. So appearance, only 2 out of 5. Composition, this is an 80 proof blended Scotch, so it's got malt whiskeys in there, and it also has grain whiskeys. While Glenfiddich, a Speyside, is clearly the home distillery, this also has another family-owned distillery, Girvan Distillery in Ayrshire, to make the grain whiskeys. One source I read says this whiskey has 25 single malts in the blend, but other sources said, and it said that single malts comprise only 35% of the blend. But I saw an interview of the Grants Master Distiller, and he says that there's 25 whiskeys in the blend. So I'm not sure of what all's in here. Blends are complex and mostly kept secret, so they're hard to evaluate for composition. And again, a couple of the old ads I found on YouTube showed them smoking the barley with peat. And so, you know, that is where the peat smoke in here comes from. So composition, I'm giving it 12 out of 15 points. Nose. Mildly sweet. There might be a touch of oak, maybe even a hint of peat. Not much. A little bit of spiciness on the nose. This is a very pleasant nose. It's not floral or perfumey. 8 out of 10 for the nose. My nose is inadequate for the smelling of whiskeys. And so if I can smell something, well, that's positive. My generic score is a 7. All right, let's taste this. The taste is surprisingly bold and spicy. Mildly sweet, but not overly sweet. Mainly I get the spice and wood notes as dominant. Perhaps a tad bit of earthiness or mossiness. This is just right up my alley. The faint taste of peat. This is not over peated. It's very subtle. It's in the background there. I think J&B and Cutty Sark may actually have more peat than this. And even Dewar's might have more peat than this. But the extra wood, the triple wood approach, makes this a little bit more darker of a drink on the palate, if not the color. spices coming through do remind me a tad bit of bourbon. Which I think is one reason why I really do like the blends so much, is that there's frequent notes that relate back to bourbon, and that's where I started. This is, when I had a glass of this the other day, it's better than I remembered it being. It's been a long time since I had a glass of Grant's neat. My first bottle of this I did drink neat years ago. But this bottle I have focused on simple cocktails until now, and you can see that there's not a whole lot left. So for taste, this is 21 out of 25. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. The mouthfeel's not thin to me. Probably a low medium. The burn is bolder than most blends, I'll say that. And that's something that I like. Because again, coming to Scotch from the bourbon and rye world, where the burn is an important part, a lot of blended Scotches are so mild that there's almost no burn. This has actually got a nice little mouth burn. Doesn't really go up in the sinuses or down the chest, but this does seem more noticeable. And the finish may be where I get a bit of peat. It's not, again, the peat's not as strong as even Dewar's. Maybe closer to Ballantine's, perhaps. So it's just a hint. The finish is medium. The lingering burn is there. So 13 of 15 for mouthfeel, burn, and finish. Now, neat or mixer. Again, neat, this is very good. All of the ads that I saw on YouTube had people putting it on the rocks. And I think this is one of the rare 80 proof whiskeys that might possibly stand up to on the rocks. I usually don't put whiskey on ice because it dilutes it so quickly. But you know, here in the hot Texas summers, sometimes I'll do that. But I really need more than an 80 proof to do that. So really neat is the way I prefer to drink it. But yesterday I made a cocktail with this. It was a simple ginger ale with a slice of lemon and ice, and with a shot of Grant's, and it was absolutely delicious. And this is one of my wife's favorite cocktails as well. This is what I've spent most of this bottle doing, is ginger ale or 7-Up with Grant's. But today I'm going to make a rusty nail with some Drambuie, so stand by. I am back with a rusty nail using Drambuie. So here's the Drambuie. Drambuie is a liqueur from Scotland, so it is like, I don't know, 70% alcohol maybe. Let's see. No, this is 80 proof. This is 80%. But it's got Scotch whiskey, heather, honey, herbs, and spices. And it's very, very sweet. And so Scotch is already just a little bit sweet. It's not like bourbon. The recipes for the rusty nail, some say, you know, well, two drams of Grant's and then 1 dram of Drambuie. So basically a 2-to-1 mix ratio. So this is what I use, and I did 1.5 of Grant's, and then not even a half, you know, maybe about there, of Drambuie, because I tend to not like overly sweet drinks. I mean, when I make an old fashioned, I have to be real careful not to get too much syrup or sugar in there. But this, while it's a little bit on the sweet side, is darn good. And the Drambuie rusty nail actually works a little bit better the peatier the whiskey that you use. So like Johnny Walker Black would be pretty pretty much perfect for this. The Grants doesn't have quite as much peat smoke as some of the other blends do, of course, but nonetheless, there's enough in there in the bourbon casks to tamp down a little bit on the sweetness. So this actually works quite well as a rusty nail. And my wife tried this just a while ago as well, and it's a little bit strong for her, but she didn't turn up her nose at it too much. It was okay, but she preferred the one I made yesterday with the ginger ale. So neat or mixer, 5 out of 5 points. Price, value, and availability. Goody Goody has this for $17.49 in Fort Worth. Specs does not carry Grants at all, apparently. Total Wine had the 1.75 liter for $23.99, which is a great price. I just don't buy 175s. I don't. I mean, that's too much of one kind. You know, if you're having a party and if you've got a favorite, I don't have a favorite whiskey. I drink a variety all the time. I mean, in the course of a week, I may drink, 10 different whiskeys. So that means there's only one place in town for me to, or at least of the 4 major stores I go to. There's only one place that has this 750. So its availability is a little bit lower. Its price and value, though, are great. So 8 out of 10 for price, value, and availability, giving me a total score. Well, no, one more adding. Bonus points. I always allow up to 5 points for bonus. And I really like the history of this, the fact that it's family owned. It's the 4th best-selling Scotch in the world. And it's always been a favorite of mine. So bonus points, 5 out of 5, giving me a total score of 83. My letter grade stresses drinkability. And so this is an A- because it's been a favorite for so long. Absolutely. So total score 83, drinkability letter grade A-. My analysis and recommendation. With just a slight trace of peat, this is a bold, spicy blend that works great, neat, or in a cocktail. I think for a bourbon drinker who wants to get into Scotch, this would be a good place to start. The spiciness it picks up from the ex-Bourbon casks is going to be a familiar touch, I think. And so again, it's been a long time favorite. But then again, I like all the blends that I've tried so far. So, oh well. On the website and other places, I have seen a much wider variety of Grant's blends than I see here in Fort Worth. There's a smoky blend. Oh, please, I would love to have that. There's an 8-year. Yes, more. A 12-year. Absolutely. I would love all those, but alas, not to be had here in Fort Worth, Texas. All right, now we're going to do the single malt surprise. There's no surprise about which one because I've shown the bottle. But what I want to do is do a taste comparison of the Glenfiddich with the Grants to see if I can see a relationship between the two. All right, let me cleanse my palate quickly. All right, first the Grants. And now the Glenfiddich. And I would say I can taste a little bit of the relationship there. Single malts have always got this one kind of boldness going right through. It's a harsh line, and harsh is not a bad term with me. It's a bold line. It goes right through the middle of it, and that's the single malt thing. All single malts seem to have it for me. And that kind of obscures the other flavors. And this is one reason why I prefer the blends, actually. I taste more. To me, I get more out of the blends than I do the single malts. However, with the Glenfiddich, I can say that there's definitely a relationship between the Grants and the Glenfiddich, as you would expect. But I don't know what other malts are in the Grants. All right, conclusion. My next few videos will be on my American Catechism channel, so it will be next week sometime before I return to Blended Scotch Reviews, and I'm going to look at a lesser known blend from Total Wine Spirits Direct lineup. It's called Shield Egg. Well, this is Stab the Dragon for Blended Scotch Reviews out here.